של שושנים, נצא נא אל הבוסתן, מור ושנים ולבונה, לרגלך מפתן. לילה יורד לאט, ורוח שושן נושבה, הווה אלחש לך שיר בלט, זמר של אהבה.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Welcome back once again. I'm so excited about Purim this week, and that's saying something because I really missed the fact that we're not going to all be together for it. In fact, last year's Purim was the last time that we gathered as a congregation together, and I am very hopeful that by next Purim we will be doing the same. But next week, we've put together some treats for you, including an investigation into what actually happened in Shushan. So please join us for the Shushan Files. The following week, we will be observing, along with congregations all over America, Hias's Refugee Shabbat. So I hope you'll join us for that too. Let's continue now with our blessing over the Shabbat candles.
Baruch haor ba'olam, Baruch haor ba'adam, Baruch haor b'shalom, b'shalom, Baruch haor, Baruch haor, b'shabbat.
How beautiful are our tents when we stand together in unity and love in the name of hope and harmony. How fragile are our tents when our fears divide us, when we allow outside winds to blow within. Who but we ourselves can define who we are, what keeps us strong, what keeps us whole? Who but we ourselves can shield us, carrying one another as one against the storm? How fair are our tents when we stand together in the name of unity, in compassion, in strength, for our children and our children's children. Ken Yehi, may we be so. We continue with the song, Ma Tovu.
Ohalecha Yaakov, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Likrat Shabbat, Lechu v'necha, Lechu v'necha, Ki mekor habracha, Mekor habracha. Ma tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael.
What is Shabbat? Ultimately, it is a call to action. For while on the seventh day our tradition imagines the world as it should be, the other 6 days each week represent the world the way it is, broken. So Shabbat may be a day of rejoicing, but it should also be a time that agitates us, pushing us to see injustice in the world, to worry for those who cry out in hunger around us, to mourn the loss of our natural resources, and to rage against the forces of oppression and injustice that plague humanity. Shabbat was viewed by our ancestors as a taste of a better world. Our rituals, observances, and celebrations of the seventh day were designed to inspire our hope for redemption, depicting a vision of Tikkun Olam, a world repaired. Continue with this new song, at least for us on Friday nights on YouTube, Ani V'Ata, You and I Will Change the World.
אני ואתה נשנה את העולם. אני ואתה אז יבואו כבר כולם. אמרו את זה קודם, לפניי זה לא משנה. אני ואתה נשנה את העולם. אני ואתה ננסה מהקלה. יהיה לנו רע, אין דבר, זה לא נורא. אמרו את זה קודם, לפניי זה לא משנה. אני ואתה נשנה את העולם.
Let us strive to lead loving, compassionate lives with our hearts, with our wisdom, and with our actions. These are the ideas that we inscribe on our inmost heart. May we practice them day and night, teaching them to our children through our words and especially through our deeds, so that the next generations learn to revere and celebrate life. Let's continue with our own movement song, Eifo Ori. Shabbat Shalom. With Purim coming this week, this Shabbat is known as Shabbat Zachor, the Shabbat that decrees remember. Its decree to remember is due to the extra Torah portion that's read this week that describes the attacks on ancient Israel by Amalek, an implacable enemy of ancient Israel in the Torah, later identified as an ancestor of Haman. And that's why I've chosen tonight to speak about American anti-Semitism. It wasn't that long ago that anti-Semitism in America was decreasing, and the American Jewish community was feeling more secure than ever before. I even remember giving a talk where I characterized it as not the big deal it used to be. Those words still haunt me. Since then, the picture has changed, sadly and strikingly. Today, and by so many measures, from anti-Semitic rhetoric to vandalism to violent hate crimes, anti-Semitism has come roaring back. Much of it is apolitical, random attacks motivated by personal hatred, such as those perpetrated against the very visibly Jewish ultra-Orthodox community. But according to the statistics kept by the SPLC, the ACLU, and notably the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, the overwhelming majority of incidents in this country can be tied to the rise of right-wing extremism. Now, the left, of course, is not blameless when it comes to political anti-Semitism, but even those many claims of left-wing anti-Semitism on campus are really overhyped. Many have been revealed as fake news, if you will. The ADL has conducted audits, as it does every year, of anti-Semitism, and concluded that even on campus, most of the politically informed anti-Semitism originates on the right. If you're not surprised by this, you're also not alone. Polling of American Jews, reported in the Jewish Forward and elsewhere, reveals that 75% of American Jews point to the extreme political right as the major threat to Jewish safety today. Yet despite these audits of American anti-Semitic acts and the feelings of most American Jews, our community's leadership, frequently funded by and obedient to a powerful minority on the right, continues to shine the spotlight on the left. Why? Well, that's because the left is where we find the largest opposition to Israel and its policies. Before I continue, I want to make a personal statement. Those of you who only know me from this YouTube format may not realize that I spent most of my career involved in Zionist activism and education. That included a long stint as a Hillel director, as the assistant director of a JCC, and it was there that I was the one who planned those big Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel Independence Day parties. Today I am much more critical of Israel than I was in the past, a path that was paved in part by Israel's own transformation. The settlements, which now seem to preclude a two-state solution, the embrace of an extremist ethno-nationalism codified into law, and the increasing acceptance by Israeli leaders of rabidly racist ultra-nationalist Kahanists, Jews who resemble Nazis in every way. The reason I share this is to assure you that I have a great deal of personal experience when it comes to understanding the relationship between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. Let me be plain. Anti-Zionism can and does blend into anti-Semitism. I recall feeling that when Minnesota Representative Ilhan Omar famously tweeted, quote, "Support for Israel in Congress is all about the Benjamins," by which she was suggesting that AIPAC is buying off American politicians. Look, American politicians, and Jews in particular, and non-Jews too, support Israel for many reasons. Financial ones are really not among them. Whatever you think about their position, that's just a fact. In that tweet, and a few other statements that she had made, Representative Omar employed classical anti-Semitic imagery. And whether she was aware of it or not, at the time, her words did rise to that standard. However, as Jewish tradition has long taught, one's transgressions are repaired by recognizing them and taking steps not to reoffend. Anyone paying attention knows that this is exactly what she did. But the Jewish right has refused to accept Representative Omar's teshuvah, and this is because she, like activist Linda Sarsour and Michigan's own Representative Rashida Tlaib, interestingly all Muslims, but joined by many who are not, continue to promote BDS, the nonviolent movement to boycott, divest from, and sanction Israel, which, along with other opposition to Israeli policies, the official Jewish community, from the ADL, yes, to the American Jewish community, to local JCRCs nationwide and many more have declared inherently anti-Semitic. Allow me to say this too very plainly, as someone who does not participate in or personally advocate BDS, it is not inherently anti-Semitic. And it is not inherently anti-Semitic either to challenge an ethno-nationalist state's policies when they control the lives of millions of people who have no say in their own destiny. That for 3/4 of its existence as a state has implemented a settlement policy, colonialization policy, that now precludes its own self-stated mission of being at once both Jewish and democratic. I could make an easy argument that these and other long-standing self-defeating Israeli policies pose a much greater threat to Israel than do any advocates of BDS. Meanwhile, over on the American extreme right, increasingly excused by and covered up by the mainstream right, real anti-Semitism has been on display for years now. I do not have time for a complete catalog, so I'll just provide a few recognizable examples, such as the use of anti-Semitic imagery and bird whistling, from adorning anti-Hillary Clinton tweets with Stars of David to that time when the disgraced former president declared that neo-Nazis chanting "Jews will not replace us" included some very fine people, to a senior presidential advisor who sported a medal awarded to him by the Hungarian neo-Nazi party, to a recent senatorial candidate who photoshopped his Jewish opponent into an advertisement, transforming him into a menacing and dark, large-nosed Jewish stereotype, to candidates who post photos with, retweets of, and endorsements from right-wing extremists, ranging from the KKK to the Proud Boys and other white supremacist groups. Right-wing extremists at the Big Lie marches back in December and January, November too, and the insurrection at the Capitol wore T-shirts emblazoned with slogans like 6 million weren't enough and Camp Auschwitz, while flashing white power hand signals. And they flooded their own social media with anti-Semitic hatred for years. These are the real anti-Semitic threats facing American Jewry. This is why 3/4 of American Jews have identified the right as the biggest threat. Meanwhile, over on the right, we find deflection, and even worse, including support of Israel being positioned as some kind of human shield against charges of anti-Semitism. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, she of the Jewish space lasers and the Rothschild-directed California fires and so many more anti-Semitic utterances and acts. Well, she did this just 3 days ago when she decried Representative Omar as the true anti-Semite. Why? Well, in part because of her support of BDS. This week, Rush Limbaugh died, which brought to mind, and to many an article online, statements of his that were clearly anti-Semitic and later covered up by, just as recently as this week, the ZOA, that right-wing organization, praises for his support of Israel. The New York Times' Michelle Goldberg has written about this. She's noted how pro-Israel Jew haters, which is a real thing, have even attacked Jews as anti-Semites. In a piece from a few years ago, she told the story of Sebastian Gorka. Remember him? He's the one who was wearing the Hungarian neo-Nazi medal and just enjoyed a pardon from our disgraced former president. Well, just a few years ago, rather, he attacked Max Berger. You may not know his name, but he's a well-known Jewish social justice activist, co-founder of If Not Now. Gorka called him an anti-Semite. She reported on many more, but this was one I really thought was audacious when she talked about a group called Proclaiming Justice to the Nation, a far right-wing evangelical group, which accused the ADL of siding with anti-Semites because of its criticism of the former guy. Remember Stephen King, that racist, anti-Semitic, white supremacist, the former congressman from Iowa? He was well known to hide behind his praises of Jews while spouting his white supremacy. Jeremy Ben-Ami, who is the head of J Street, described it this way: the Jewish right made a deal with the devil, and what they've done is to lie down in bed with white nationalists and racists and bigots who now feel entitled to use their backing of Israel as an alibi. Opposition to Israel, its policies and configuration as an ethno-nationalist state are not ipso facto anti-Semitic, nor is advocating BDS, which is a position taken by many Jews too. Apropos of that, it's important to remember that historically, not all Jews rallied around the idea of a Jewish state in the first place. The Reform movement was steeped in a theology of anti-Jewish nationalism that only completely disappeared with the rise of Nazi Germany. For many years, the American Jewish community was decidedly non-Zionist. Many Orthodox Jews opposed Zionism, and many ultra-Orthodox continue to do so today. None of these Jews were anti-Semitic, and neither are If Not Now, or the Never Again Action Group, or the Jewish Voice for Peace. Anti-Zionism has never been inherently anti-Semitic. Our American Jewish leadership's focus on BDS and anti-Israel activism is hurting the fight against anti-Semitism. When the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, an intergovernmental body to be sure, but dominated to a certain extent by the U.S., adopted what they called a non-legally binding working definition of anti-Semitism, which was embraced and used by the former administration, fully 7 of its 11 examples of anti-Semitism focused on people's statements about Israel. Statements that are in some cases close to or identical to statements made by committed Jews and Jewish groups. The right may believe that the real threat of anti-Semitism lies with supporters of BDS, but there's a reason that 3/4 of American Jews know that it's untrue. It is past time for our leadership to do a better job putting the focus on the battle against anti-Semitism where it really belongs. And it's not on Ilhan Omar. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
לא יישא גוי אל גוי הרב, לא ילמדו עוד מלחמה. לא יישא גוי אל גוי הרב, לא ילמדו עוד מלחמה. לא יישא גוי אל גוי הרב, לא ילמדו עוד מלחמה. לא יישא גוי אל גוי הרב, לא ילמדו עוד מלחמה. לא יישא גוי אל גוי הרב, לא ילמדו עוד מלחמה. לא יישא גוי אל גוי הרב, לא ילמדו עוד מלחמה. לא יישא גוי אל גוי הרב, לא ילמדו עוד מלחמה. לא יישא גוי אל גוי הרב, לא ילמדו עוד מלחמה.
The prophet Isaiah, who was probably a real person, is famous for prophecies of peace like those in the song that we just sang. The full version of that verse says, V'chitetu charvotam le'iti, v'chaninoteihem lemazmerot, lo yisagoy el goy cherev, v'lo yilmedu od milchama. Let them beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, and neither shall they learn war any more. The poet Yehuda Hamichai lived in the 20th century and has his own place in the history of Jewish literature. He answered, a little bit cheekily, but with great seriousness, the challenge of Isaiah with these words: "Don't stop after beating the swords into plowshares. Don't stop. Go on beating and make musical instruments out of them. Whoever wants to make war again will have to turn them into plowshares first." We continue with Naaseh Shalom. In this community where we find strength and common purpose, we turn our minds and hearts toward all those who need our love and support, those who are ill, those who suffer pain of the body or spirit, those who are lonely, those who have been wronged. Tonight we extend our well wishes to these members of our community and their loved ones, to Demi Bird, Julia Eliason, Karen Tremper Harris, Myron Tink, and Rabbi Peter Schweitzer. May all who suffer know that they are not alone. May they be healed quickly. May they experience a complete recovery, refuah shlema, the renewal of their bodies and the renewal of their spirits. Continue with Makom HaKoach. Our thoughts turn to those who are no longer with us, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every people and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. We recall now our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have taken into our hearts with our own. Tonight we send our condolences overseas to our friend in Scotland, Jamie Hines, whose cousin Charlene Ritchie lost her husband Alan Graham to COVID. Yehi zichro baruch. We also observe tonight the yahrzeits of these members of our community and their loved ones, of Albert Asher, Ann Jarris, Louis Linden, Barbara Lipschutz, Greta Lipson, A. David Markowitz, Eli Master, Pauline Robb, Marion Sandler, Gertrude Stewart, Arlen Abraham Walker, and William Wolfe. Yehi zichram livracha. May the memories of these beloved people provide some source of comfort to those who face life in their absence. Well, that's it for tonight, everybody. I'm looking forward to next week. It won't be a regular service because we've got our documentary. I've got a little story to read you about the Grinch who almost stole Purim and some other fun stuff. We will, however, be mentioning those who are ill and remembering the yahrzeits next week as part of our regular program always includes. So that's it. Shabbat Shalom. We'll see you soon. Let's finish now with this beautiful interpretation of the words Hine Matov. We're not together in person, but we will be, and soon.
Hine Matov u'mayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Behold how good it is when people dwell together, living as one people, hand in hand. What keeps us safe and strong is that we have each other, one human family across the land. Hine matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad.